Hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Claire Peterson. I'm happy to present with you my psychology senior thesis, which I conducted research on the topic of icks. This project was advised by Dr. Swalve, and additional assistance was provided by Dr. Cuccolo, to whom I am very grateful. So getting into the previous research, there's been a decent amount of previous research done on disgust as emotion. From the evolutionary perspective, we see disgust as a sensitivity to pathogens and aspects of sexuality and morality with the purposes of presenting disease and incest. From the application standpoint, we see interesting correlations with social factors, such as a study which found that those with a dismissive avoidant attachment style found their partner's body odor more disgusting than a stranger's. Similarly, further research on sexual disgust has allowed us to discover just how broad it can be found. Over 2,300 unique items were found to cause sexual disgust in one study, and yet in another study, the context of monogamous relationships, witnessing one's partner disgusted by non-monogamous activities such as cheating or threesomes, actually increased witnessing partners' sexual satisfaction. And lastly, most related to the present topic is the concept of social allergies, which is defined as a hypersensitive annoyance or disgust to a repeated behavior. Examples of this were found to be uncouth habits, inconsiderate acts, intrusive behaviors, and norm violations. So, getting into some cultural context on icks, I have two TikToks, and unfortunately, Microsoft Teams, which I'm recording on, won't allow me to play them. So, I'm just going to have to tell you what the first one says. So, Lauren includes the following in her list of icks that boys have given her in the last year: wearing flip-flops, using an Android, dressing up for Halloween, hearing his nose whistle when he took a breath, and he didn't know the difference between there, and there. The second is simply this caption suggesting that an ick was the ultimate breaking point for him to let go of the person he was talking to at the time. Within the first TikTok, there's like this immense sense of comedic effect, and that icks are something to laugh about. However, the second is very much less so, kind of grim, suggesting that there's a divide in severity, determining what icks are and their consequences. But first, we have to ask, what are icks and do they matter? And this is the exact questions that we are hoping to begin answering today. So, getting into the study. After receiving IRB approval, we gathered participants through reaching out to professors at the college to offer this opportunity to their students for extra credit. The survey was sent out through Google Forms, and there was an optional interview section, which participants could report their email to schedule an interview online through Microsoft Teams or in person if that's what they preferred. These interviews were about 10 to 15 minutes in length and were structured with about the same 7 questions across participants. When signing informed consent, both for the survey and the interview, participants were made aware that they could skip any question that they did not feel comfortable answering, and we kept confidentiality through only having participants report the last 4 digits of their phone number for referencing purposes. Of the 109 participants, most were heterosexual in a romantic relationship, and they described it as dating and identified with she, her pronouns. So looking into the ick responses, the vast majority of participants had heard the term ick either online or in person before, and the majority had either gotten an ick in a romantic relationship before. However, fewer indicated that icks had ever contributed to the ending of their romantic relationships. Participants also indicated that if they had gotten ick, the ick varied in length, such that some were momentary, lasting only seconds or minutes, others were moderate, lasting a few days, and some were prolonged, lasting weeks to months of time. So on top of the demographic survey and questionnaire about icks, here are the 3 Likert-style scales we utilize to measure various facets about participants and their relationships. The first, the perceived relationship quality component scale, measured satisfaction, commitment, intimacy, trust, passion, and love. The second, the adult attachment scale, measured anxiety, avoidance, closeness, and dependency. And the partner disgust scale measured partner-directed disgust. It was altered from a self-disgust scale. And for those who were not currently in a relationship, filling out the survey, they were asked to answer the questions based on their last relationship. And those who had never been in a relationship before were asked to answer based on how they would imagine it would be. So next, getting into the univariate stats. You can see on the right side, we have a scale here on how low to high it can be. For the perceived relationship quality component scale, the highest means were love and commitment. For the adult attachment scale, all were high, but avoidance was just barely the highest. Partner disgust was surprisingly low. On a scale of 13 to 91, only being at 33 for the mean is somewhat surprising to me. Next, so unfortunately, none of our regression models were statistically significant, but some interesting significant correlations still occurred. The first model looked at whether participants had gotten an ick in a romantic relationship and was significantly correlated with passion, such that less passion was associated with a higher likelihood of getting an ick in a romantic relationship. This seems plausible due to the fact that lack of passion may make us feel more inclined to notice the potential deterrence of our partners. And furthermore, perhaps individuals who have lost or never acquired passion in their relationships are subconsciously looking for reasons to confirm their suspicions that there is little interest or attraction within the relationship and maybe they should break up. So our second one evaluated how long participants experienced icks for, which relates to the momentary, moderate, and prolonged measurements we talked about earlier. This was significantly correlated with dependency and avoidance, such that feeling like one cannot depend on their partner, as well as having a higher avoidance attachment style, was correlated with longer experiences of icks. And this also seems plausible due to the fact that a lack of comfort to depend on one's partner could indicate that there's insecurities within the relationship, causing one to ruminate on the icks and feeling them for a longer period of time. It also seems plausible because avoidance within a relationship can often be due to a sense of closeness that will lead to a loss of freedom and feel suffocating. Similarly to the participant in the interview section, one of them utilized icks not to get back with their former partner, kind of deterrent, and perhaps those with an avoidant attachment style utilize icks to maintain a safe distance from their partner. It also seems to remain in accordance with the previous literature on avoidance and disgust that we talked about earlier. So the last model evaluated whether icks contributed to the ending of a romantic relationship and was significantly correlated with commitment, such that as commitment in a relationship increased, the likelihood that an ick contributed to the ending of the relationship also increased. While this initially seems implausible, at least less plausible than the others, and intuitively a little bit backwards, the results of the interview section shed light on how this correlation actually can make sense. One participant described that when they experienced an ick with their partner, they would address the issue and ask their partner to work on it to resolve the problem. And often their partner followed up and made the changes necessary, which resulted in a reassuring satisfaction about both the relationship and their partner. Perhaps, though, if an ick is addressed by a partner but unable to be resolved and the partner continues to fail to resolve the problem, it could be perceived as an indicator that the relationship should end. So within both the survey and the interview sections, we gained insight on how participants defined icks and the specific icks that they had gotten. We utilized emergent theme analysis in order to discover which themes were most prevalent in answering these two questions. So the most common themes for the first question mentioned the term turn off, or a general lack of attraction, as well as words such as disgusting, cringy, irritating, and annoying. But the most surprising to me was that several participants indicated that icks can inherently change the view of one's partner and cause second guessing within the relationship. Meanwhile, others stated the exact opposite, saying that icks were a quality that their partners had and maybe irritated them, but they loved their partners despite of it. This second question received a very broad collection of responses, most of which were incredibly niche. However, here are some of the most prominent themes that emerged. Some of these seem to be rather minor, such as telling bad jokes, whereas others, such as sexual discomfort and boundary crossing, seem far from minor. And next, it would feel like a bit of a disservice to not include some of these examples. Keep in mind that these responses were open-ended, and we received paragraphs of participants listing all of the icks they had ever gotten in their entire lives. And so it feels wrong to not address the comedic effect that some of these responses had. And some of the participants literally typed out LOL, laugh out loud, into their responses. So I'll let you read the first and the last, but gulping down water so long that they had to gasp for air after, and moaning while cleaning their ears with a Q-tip. Both seem like very plausible icks, and I think are excellent examples of what an ick really is. So next, let's move into the discussion section. Contrary to the regular disgust from the evolutionary perspective of avoiding disease and incest, some of these icks just did not seem at all reliable onto it. I've seen people say that they get icks from their partner wearing blue jeans, which I don't know if that really carries much of an evolutionary support from it. Some do seem to make some sense, such as cheating and losing your partner to another person, or childishness and inability to raise offspring. From the next point, it seems that icks are incredibly personalized. The use of a baby voice was an interesting example for this. Some people talked about baby voices giving them a deep ick, but there are a lot of people that really enjoy baby voices in their intimate circumstances with their relationship and their partner. So it seems that there are some icks that are not unanimous among all people. Next, with looking at social allergies and icks, there was a lot that overlapped. A lot of themes seemed to be prevalent, but social allergies were reported as inconsiderate acts, intrusive behaviors, and norm violations, which all seem to be based on a moral vice of some kind. Whereas the largest number of ick examples were provided as niche-specific examples that couldn't exactly be tied to any particular vice, the way that being inconsiderate could. For example, one participant described the way they were picked up for a first date and their potential partner started a freestyle rap to the song playing in the car. And they were so uncomfortable and they got such an ick and they just sat there and they bared it, but they did not want to see them ever again. And I think singing in the car is something that many individuals partake in, and few would see this as an inherent issue. Yet at the same time, it's plausible and justifiable that some people could get an ick from this. Next, participants in the optional interview brought up the social media role consideration, and some were very concerned that this has a negative impact on our relationships such that we are looking for icks. Yet others saw positive outcomes relating to people seeing that their feelings and their experiences are felt by others too, and creating a sense of acceptance in the community. So as a recommendation, it could be very valuable to evaluate the precise messages brought up on social media and how they influence participants for future research. We should talk about some limitations. The first and probably the largest it was very challenging to create a completely comprehensive scale for each of these predictive factors. Some of the facets evaluated in the relationship quality scale were determined by only 3 questions. And so it's plausible that research that were to emphasize these few qualities in much more breadth would be able to create more precise predictive results. So it could be very helpful to do that in the future, as well as larger sample sizes would also be very, very helpful in future research. So concluding and wrapping it up, referring back to our initial questions about icks, it seems that icks are personalized experiences of disgust, cringe, or irritation from a partner, which can be either short-lived or prolonged. Now, emphasizing the personalized portion of this, it seems that outcomes from icks are equally personalized. And this leads into the second question of, do icks matter? Which it depends. Again, icks are so individualized that each person and each relationship dynamic can have different experience with icks. So here are my references mentioned within this presentation. And obviously I couldn't cover everything. So if you want to see a full report of the study, or if you have any questions or comments, do not hesitate to email me. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you all have a great rest of Honors Day.